Hey, how's it going? Good? Whew. All right. Sunshine, vitamin D, like you guys got it going on. It's awesome to see you today. My name's Daryl Holden. I'm one of the pastors here. If we haven't met yet, it's really good to be with you. Thanks for coming, being part of this worship service with us. Hey, if you're new to Christ Community, we're so glad you're here. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining us online. If you're in the room, we'd love the chance to meet you after this service. If you just stop at the welcome desk on your way out, we have a gift for you. If you'll give us your contact information. If you're online, we would love that you just hit the connect button, give us your contact information there. We'll reach out. And what we'd love to know is how we could pray for you, help you, serve you, any questions we could answer for you. We want to be helpful to you in that way. So love the opportunity to meet you and begin building a relationship as you try to figure out if this is your church. So thanks for giving us a shot this weekend. Glad to be together with you. I need to give a shout out this week to our operations team and to our tech team. So late in the week, you see there's construction going on all around us. Somebody cut a power line and it was dark in this room. So we have been able to see each other and see the screens and all that cool stuff. Big scramble that went on late in this week. So shout out to our operations and tech team for getting us up and back online. Really grateful for that. And also wanted to just give a shout out to our church. Over the last several weeks, we've had this welcome project. We've been having our groundbreaking offering. 175 families have contributed, households have contributed to that offering. And that is just a huge win for us as a church. We're just looking for full participation. A lot of money given, north of $200,000, but really it's a yes to what God is doing here at Christ Community and to what's ahead for us in those days. So if you're part of that, thank you. If you haven't been part of it yet and you want to jump in, you can still give to the welcome project. So go ahead and give to that and be praying for it. There are great things that are going on, and every once in a while they cut a power line. So it's our phrase here, and you guys heard me say it, is we're comfortably inconvenienced. So that's just kind of what this season of construction is, comfortable inconvenience. So thankful for what God's doing, thankful for your generosity towards this. And again, really glad we get to be together this weekend. So when I was a kid, I saw this bumper sticker on a truck, and I think I noticed the bumper sticker because the truck was a cool truck, and I was, late teens and looking at that. The bumper sticker said, "He who dies with the most toys wins." And I remember seeing that and laughing at it because it was funny to me at that point. I thought it was kind of funny. And I think I remembered it because I'm competitive and always trying to figure out how to keep score for stuff. And I knew that it was a joke and that nobody really has this as their rule of life, that whoever dies with the most toys wins. And so just kind of held on to that. And then when I was about a decade later, so I'm in my late 20s at this point, I saw another bumper sticker and it said, "Whoever dies with the most toys still dies." Right? And that was sobering to me. Because I remembered the one from my late teens, and it was funny, and I'm a decade later now, and I'm in the adult world, and I have adult friends, and I've been doing it just long enough to know that while nobody would really say, he who dies with the most toys, she who dies with the most toys wins, we kind of live that way. And so whoever dies with the most toys still dies. For me, it was so maybe it wasn't trying to accumulate toys, but whoever dies with the most toys, whoever has the biggest bank account, whoever makes it to the C-suite, whoever's able to give their kids the greatest advantage, whoever looks best in the bathing suit. Whatever calls to you and that kind of stuff, we find ourselves chasing those kinds of things. And what I was seeing, beginning to learn, and what you've experienced too, is when you live that way and you make, you accomplish something that's connected to the direction what you're chasing, there's something that's satisfying about that, but there's also this inner awareness that there's got to be more than this, right? So yeah, get a cool toy, grow my bank account, get a promotion, give my kids something that gives them a leg up, satisfying, but just the inner awareness that even when that's happening, there's got to be more than this. And so what I'd like us to talk about this weekend is that inner awareness that there has to be more than this. And what I'd like to say at the start of all this is that inner awareness when there's something that's happened good for you that's satisfies but isn't satisfying, that there's got to be more. That inner awareness is 100% right. There is something more than this. There's something better than this, but it's not in the place that you and I are naturally inclined to look. It's actually something that God has for you and that God wants to give to you. It's a gift that he has, and it's something that you and I can receive so that we could live with a deep sense of satisfaction, and that inner awareness no longer says like there's got to be more. That inner awareness says this is it. This is it. So today, like, we're in this series for the summer, first part of the summer, on Psalms. We're calling them words when you have no words, and we're praying these prayers and songs of God's ancient people. So today we're going to talk from Psalm 49. So Psalm 49 is a wisdom psalm. It's a psalm that was sung to impart wisdom, and thought it might be funny if we would sing it together, but then not going to put us in that because like it's hard to sing, and I think it's hard to sing because it doesn't rhyme in our language, and because it's old. It was chanted originally, and so like we're just going to read it together and talk about it some. I'm not going to push you that far to have to sing it, but we're going to learn from this psalm. And so I'm really excited for us to be able to spend some time together in this wisdom psalm learning. And so this psalm starts with a promise. So the first few verses of this psalm, the psalmist makes this promise. He says, "Hear this, all you peoples, listen, all who live in the world, both low and high, rich and poor alike. My mouth will speak words of wisdom. The meditation of my heart will give you understanding." So the promise of this psalm is actually to impart understanding. And we'll talk about that in a minute, but what I really am grateful for, just as we step into this psalm, it's for everybody. It's not just for, like, you guys know, I'm from the South. It's not just for like y'all, it's for all y'all, right? So it's for all of us, all who live in the world, both low and high. And so like if you would say, I'm really important, well, this psalm is for you. And if you would say, I'm not very important at all, and those are funny designations in my mind, because all of us are important to somebody and unimportant to other people. However you view yourself, low and high, like this psalm is for you. And if you're a church person, like it's for you. And if you're not a church person, if you're not even sure, so this psalm was actually written by people who take their relationship with God really seriously, and not like in a strangling way, but in a life-giving way. And they wrote this, but if you would say, hey, I'm not really a church person, I'm not really a religious person, like it's okay. This understanding, it's for you. And so we have this great opportunity to receive understanding. Like it's been given to all of us, and so we lean into this idea, and it's free, right? It's free. It's for the rich and the poor. Like nobody has to pay for this. Like everybody gets it. And so we get this understanding, the opportunity to gain understanding. And the reason it's so important to the psalmist that the people who hear his wisdom get understanding is this is how the psalm ends. This verse is how the psalm ends. People who have wealth but lack understanding are like the beasts that perish. So this is not a condemnation on being wealthy or having influence or power, whatever wealth buys. When you think of somebody who's wealthy, it's not a condemnation on that, because you remember back from those first couple of verses, the invitation. Wealthy people are invited to come and to hear this and to gain understanding. So it's not a condemnation on the wealthy. And on top of that, I think as we start to lean into this a little bit, we have to acknowledge that all of us have wealth. All of us have wealth. We also have this tendency to look up the ladder and not down the ladder and say, well, I don't have any wealth because like that's what wealthy people look like. And if we look down, like there's people below us on the wealth. We all have wealth. We all have resource. We have time, we have energy, we have money, we have learning, we have intelligence, we have opportunity. We all have resource. And so we have the opportunity to be people who have wealth. But if you have wealth and you lack understanding, you are like the beasts that perish. Okay, so question for you. When you hear that little phrase, the beasts that perish, what kind of beast comes to your mind? Right, this is poetry, so we're getting to play with it. What kind of beast comes to your mind when you think about the beasts that perish? Can I tell you what comes to my mind? It's a herd of cows. I love cows. Confession, they're my favorite animal. When I was a kid, we had cows. Marie and I had them early in our marriage. I liked them. I liked them better than dogs and cats and horses. I like cows. And when I think about beasts that perish, what comes to mind for me is a herd of cows, because what a herd of cows does is a herd of cows lives out in a field, and they spend their day roaming around that field and grazing on grass, and maybe a farmer comes along and dumps some hay, and so they spend a few minutes of their day chasing the farmer's truck, and then eating the hay that the farmer dumps out there, and they do it again tomorrow. Like they just move around and they take up space out in the pasture, and then when the time comes, they die. And when they die, again, I love cows. I love them on the front end. I love them on the backside. When they die, they're useful, but what they produce, that's temporary too, right? And so it's like they live this life that's just kind of moving around and taking up space, and when they're done, even the value add is just something that's here for a little bit and gone. And when I think about a beast that perishes, yeah, that's what comes to mind for me. And this understanding that the psalmist says he'll impart through this psalm is really designed to keep you and me from having that kind of life of just kind of being here and moving around and taking up space and getting some stuff that we would say, oh, this is good, and then when it ends, come die, and even that, the value we had, it was just temporary to the lives of other people. The psalm is to help us be people who fulfill what it's like to be made in the image of God and to be created for eternal purposes. And so this psalm, before we jump into it, really has two practical applications for us. The first one is to rescue us from being people who lack understanding. Because that's our natural drift, is to be people who just kind of move around and take up space and chase after things that satisfying but don't really satisfy, and value that we add is just kind of temporary in nature. And so this psalm can rescue us from being people who lack understanding. And then the second thing that this psalm does is it actually gives us perspective on life in a way that rescues us from fear, because a life lived in fear is a life that is way less than what God has created you for. And so it rescues us from a life lived in fear, and it actually stirs up faith in us. The wisdom of this song is incredibly valuable to you and to me, leading us into this understanding. So the wisdom portion of this psalm starts with like this little phrase that I've hung over, and this is a phrase that Marie and I have just kind of hung on to, and we say this to each other every once in a while, because this psalm is about having an eternal perspective, recognizing that there's more to life than just this life. And so this little statement is just from us, and we remind ourselves of this every once in a while, that this life is short and the next life is long. And in that perspective, this life is short, the next life is long, changes everything for us as we make our way through this life. This life is temporary, it's the next life that's eternal, and so we get to live in that. And so this wisdom psalm starts with, like the wisdom portion of the psalm starts with this question. It says, why should I fear when evil days come, when wicked deceivers surround me, those who trust in their wealth and boast of their great riches? Why should I be afraid? And so this is a rhetorical question. And so the answer that the psalmist is expecting as he poses the question to why should I fear when evil days come is like, you shouldn't. But if we could pause here for a second. Why should I fear when evil days come, when wicked deceivers surround me? And I want to answer the question, well, because of evil. Hey, why should I fear when evil days come? Well, because of evil. Evil is like that. That's scary, right? And I'm surrounded. And I'm surrounded by people who have more than me. And it's not just that they have wealth, it's that they have influence, power, and they have the ability to bring their weight to bear on me in negative ways. Why should I be afraid? Well, because evil days. And I was thinking about this and like maybe what this would look like in 21st century United States. Evil days come, why would I be afraid? So you're at work and somebody, and you don't know who, has started saying something about you, and you don't know exactly what they've been saying, but you know that somebody's saying something about you because you hear some whispers in places in your office, and somebody's talking about you, and people are starting to look at you a little differently, and then your boss is starting to treat you a little differently, but nobody's said anything. You just know somebody's saying something, and you know that it's starting to interfere with your job, and it's possibly going to interfere with your career trajectory. It's going to mess with your livelihood, and you can't figure out where it's coming from. Why should I be afraid when evil days come? Maybe a scenario from some other parts of the world. You're at church this weekend, only there's 3 to 5 of you in the place, and you're in a house, and you're sitting in a little room in the house, and it's dark because we can't let anybody see in, and it's time to sing, and we have to whisper the songs because nobody outside the house can hear what's going on in here. Because if somebody sees in, or if somebody hears what's happening, they're gonna alert the authorities, and the government officials are gonna show up. And when the government officials show up, our pastor goes back to jail, and we lose our job, and our kids don't get to go to school anymore. And so you're sitting in church, and it's dark, and you're just whispering the songs, and about the time the pastor starts the sermon, a government official's car pulls up into the driveway. Why should I fear when evil days come? Right? I mean, like we all understand why we fear when evil days come. And so maybe we should ask the question, maybe this question should be understood a little differently. Why should I live in fear when evil days are present? Because like there's a lot of fear in the world we live in today. There's people, there's fear-mongering is everywhere. And the reason there's so much fear-mongering going on in our world is because it works. Because we hear things we should be afraid of, and we become afraid of those things, and then we're trying to figure out, okay, how do I live now in fear of this? And the psalmist just asked us this awesome little question. Why should I fear when evil days come? Why should I live in fear? Because if we live in fear, we don't get to live the kind of life that God intended for us to live. Why should I live in fear? And the way the question's asked, the answer is I shouldn't. So why shouldn't I? Well, the reason you and I shouldn't live in fear when evil days come, when we're surrounded, when we're oppressed, is because this life is short and the next life is long. And so the psalmist goes on and tells us, no one can redeem the life of another or give to God a ransom for them. The ransom for a life is costly. No payment's ever enough so that they should live on forever and not see decay. Like everybody dies. All can see that the wise die, the foolish, the senseless also perish. They leave their wealth to others. Their tombs will remain their houses forever, their dwellings for endless generations, though they had named lands after themselves. So somebody's got enough money to figure out how to name something after themselves, and yet that person they're still in the grave. People, here it is, this is the point of this whole little section. People, despite their wealth, do not endure. We are like the beasts that perish. We all die. Doesn't matter if you're wise or you're foolish or if you're rich or you're poor, we all die. And no amount of money or prestige or power or like you fill in the thing that kind of calls to you, none of that changes the fact that we all die. So when I was a kid, we would go to the arcade at the mall. So I'm showing my age today. We'd go to the arcade at the mall and we put quarters in a machine. A quarter is this little piece of metal that's about this big around and it's worth 25 cents. And you'd put that in the machine. And there were a lot of games that we liked to play when we were kids that at the end, like you lost all your lives and there'd be a little timer on the screen. If you'd put another quarter in that machine, you could have more time. You could have more lives. It's only in video games, not in real life. There's nobody who has enough money that when your time is up, you can say to God, hey, here's another quarter, and I'd like to live another life. We all die. And so we live in this existence of like this life is short. Nobody gets to buy themselves an extra life, and nobody could buy you an extra life. This life is really short. And the psalmist, from the position of being an oppressed person, is actually offering this as a statement of hope. Life was tough in that moment, and people, evil days, he's surrounded, and powerful people had him under their weight and under their influence, and he just says, like, hey, this life is short, and we can take comfort in that because there's relief for the oppressed, and there's justice for the oppressor. And just to make sure that we get the point, like drives the point home, verses 13 and 14. This is the fate of those who trust in themselves. Their forms will decay in the graves, far from their princely mansions. Like there's a lot of imagery in this psalm about people being in the ground at the end of this life, because this life is short. And so our answer for why we don't fear when evil days come is because this life is short. For them, for me, it'll be over soon, and then what? Right? And then what? And so having really held it strongly in front of us that like we're all gonna die. This life is short. The psalmist makes this radical faith statement. Like if you're a church person and you've been around a little bit, like this next statement doesn't come out of the blue for you, but if you're just a person reading this psalm for the first time, like this next statement just seems to come out of the blue, because all we've heard is this life is short and we die, and that's the end. And then he makes this radical faith statement. He says, but God will redeem me from the realm of the dead. He will surely take me to himself. And so the psalmist, the hope isn't just that it's gonna be over soon, but the hope is like there is a God who will reach down and redeem me. He will reach into the grave at a price to himself. He will reach into the grave and he will redeem me, and not just like leave me around, but bring me all the way to himself. It's this beautiful faith statement. And he gives no other evidence of what or why he's gonna be redeemed from the grave other than just this radical statement of, but God is gonna redeem me. And so there's this hope and there's this faith that there is someone who interrupts. We're born and then we die. We're born and then we die. Like that there's someone who steps in and interrupts. And so we get to live forever. And so what this life is short, the next life is long, and faith is the currency, if we could use that word. Faith is the currency for eternity. In this life, the currency is money and wealth and advantage, toys and big bank accounts and all looking good in babies, like all the stuff, right? In this life, that's the currency. But in the next life, faith is the currency that God is gonna step in and he is going to rescue me. He's gonna redeem me for himself. And the stuff that is currency in this life gets, like it buys you nothing. It buys you nothing in the next life. And since currency in this life, like that stuff doesn't matter in the next one. That's the source of that little, there's gotta be more. That inner voice that's saying there's gotta be more to this. It's part of you that's made for eternity saying, this stuff is for now, it's not for later. There's gotta be more. This is the stuff that's more. And since faith is the currency, not big bank accounts and not giving your kids every advantage so the psalmist takes us into this next spot. Because faith is the currency for eternity, don't be overawed when others grow rich. And the splendor of their house becomes great, it increases, for they'll take nothing with them when they die. Their splendor will not descend with them. And though while they live, they count themselves blessed, and people praise you when you prosper, they're gonna join those who've gone before them and who will never again see the light of light. So this life is short, the next life is long. Don't be overawed when somebody seems to be winning in the things that belong to this life. Don't be overawed when others grow rich. Don't be impressed by it. Don't develop a desire for it. Money, all the things it buys, including power and influence, are not as important as we tend to think they are. So because faith is the currency for eternity, and because this life, it really matters, there is a greater purpose for your money and for your life. And I'm talking about your money and your life together, because if you've been paying attention as we've read through this psalm, what you've seen is there really is, the psalmist intertwines this idea of wealth and life and purpose and what matters and what lasts and what doesn't, right? And so there's a greater purpose for your money and for your life. You can spend your money in your one and only life and be like the beasts who perish, or you can spend your money and your one and only life on things that matter today into eternity. And so thinking about that and how we do that, talk about that quickly together this weekend, Jesus gave us three things that matter the most now and into eternity. And these three things are a package deal. These aren't like, I like this one and these other two not so much, or I like these two and that one's uncomfortable for me. These three things are a package deal. If you'll invest your life and your resources into these three things, living out these three things, and all that other stuff that our culture tells us and our heart might tell us, or that's where it's at, like if we let this speak over that, here's the three things that Jesus said. The first thing that Jesus said to us is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength. Right? And that's a big call on our lives right now. And Jesus spoke about it regularly. You can't love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength and be chasing the biggest bank account, or be chasing the highest position, or be chasing, those other things compete for God's position in our lives. And so to love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the second thing that Jesus said, he said, love one another the way I've loved you. It's like before it had been said, and love your neighbor the way you love yourself. Jesus says, love one another the way I've loved you, which is, he laid down his life. He gave up his life for other people. And so there's this sacrificial love that we're being called to. And so to put others ahead of ourselves, and again, it's really difficult to put other people ahead of yourself when you're chasing the most toys, the biggest bank account, the greatest advantage for your kids, for your family. So Jesus calls us to this, love one another as I have loved you. And then he said at the end of his life, as he was kind of getting ready to push his first followers out into life after his death and resurrection, he said this really cool thing to him. He said, as the Father, God the Father, sent me to come and serve and give my life as a sacrifice for you, as the Father sent me, I'm sending you. And so we get to live sent by Jesus on the same mission that the Father sent him on. And so we've been handed this whole new way to live. Our natural inclination is to run after more toys, more money, more opportunities for our kids, for our families, more. And all along the way, that inner awareness that, okay, that like I'm glad this happened, but this isn't it. We've been offered rescue from that, of giving our one and only life to stuff that never satisfies, or to receive this beautiful opportunity that we could spend our days loving God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, loving each other the way Jesus loved us, and staying sent on this mission that he's given to us. So we get to choose. So here's how I want to wrap all this up. And these are the words. This is the prayer. This is the prayer for today, and this is the prayer into this week. The words from this psalm that really, I think, help us figure out how to live with an eternal perspective, how it means not just for me, but how it is for you to lean into life. This life's short, the next life is long. And so just some lines from this psalm for us, for your prayer time to start. Lord, I'm listening. Lord, I'm listening. If you were going to come to me and say, hey, I need to know what it looks like to live with an eternal perspective, I could offer you maybe some more specifics after we talk for a little bit than what I've given you today. But God will tell you if you want to know. And so to start your prayer time with, Lord, I'm listening. And then to tell him, I'm trusting you, and I'm not trusting myself, not my bank account, not someone else. That's a bold faith statement. That I'm abandoning my trust in how much money I have, or what this person's going to do for me, or that this is going to provide the kind of family life I hope for us. Like, I'm abandoning my trust in all of that, and God, I'm trusting you. I'm trusting you. To ask, please, God, give me this understanding that the psalmist writes about. Could I have that understanding that the psalmist writes about? Because without that understanding, we are like the beasts that move around the pasture and take up space, and then we die. So could I have this understanding? And would you rescue me from fear? Because I don't want to live in fear of evil days, and I don't want to live in fear of those who've surrounded me. I don't want to live with fear. I want to live the kind of life that you want me to experience. And will you rescue me from futility? Because again, I don't just want to be moving around the pasture and taking up room. And would you lead me into my greater purpose? And then to wrap up your prayer time with that beautiful little statement again, Lord, I'm listening. If you're listening, he'll speak. And when he speaks, he'll give you understanding that'll lead you away from, there's got to be more to life than this, leading you into, this is the life I was made to live. So I'd like to wrap up my time with you just by praying this for us. Would you guys please bow your head, close your eyes with me, and let's pray together. So Heavenly Father, thank you for speaking. So we want to be people who listen. Thank you for rescue. We are in deep need. None of us is above this. None of us has life so figured out that we don't need it. None of us is below this or so far away from it that you can't reach us. Thank you for rescue that you provide for us. And thank you for this greater purpose, that we do not just have to move around and breathe and take up space and then we're gone. Thank you for the opportunity to live in a way that makes a difference today into eternity. We are a great big yes to that. So would you call us to pray? Would you call us to listen? Would you call us away from these lesser things? And would you give us faith and the courage that we need to say yes to this greater purpose that you have laid before us? Jesus, all this good stuff comes to us through you. And so we're really grateful. Thank you for loving us. Because you've loved us, we love you. We pray these things in your name. Amen.